I want to thank you all, really from the bottom of my heart. I find that these moments of joy that we've been having must have been preceded by difficulties each of you faced by yourself. And I'm mindful of that and proud of you. So, good work. Roll it. So I'm a very practical person, and I do things for a reason. In my work, which is largely textual, I create books, and those books are sometimes described as being thin or minimal, and there's a reason for that. So what's the reason? Well, words cost money. Anytime you use a word, there's a danger that when you use it, it means one thing, and then some company exerts power or money over it. That word ceases to mean what you wanted it to mean. So instead of doing that, I'm elusive and I just don't use all the words. Some people even say that I don't know any adjectives. It might be true. I think of my books not so much as books as I believe that they're repositories of thoughts. And it makes a difference because as a repository of thought, the book's principal purpose is to deliver tools to the reader. I think I try to make books that are full of tools that will help with the trauma of life. I believe in ambiguity as the utmost address of life's condition, and I believe in the conditionality of experience. So in my books, you'll always find multiple viewpoints contending. Never truth from one perspective. I think it's preposterous. So, last year, the year before, I realized that I had never written a Down syndrome character in any of my books. And I've written many characters of almost every kind. This is material because one of the most important people in my life, my brother Abram, had Down syndrome. And he passed away many years ago now. After 18 operations, he was quadriplegic and on a ventilator. His life was not long, but we don't know how to judge a life, really, We don't know if a short life is better or a long life, or what beauty can be enmeshed in a heart. And his heart was very strong, and his vision of life was vivid, and it lives on and is the core of my work, certainly. So I had to write a book about him. And it's difficult because the atmosphere that surrounds people with Down syndrome in our culture is, we should be judged on how we treat those who can least bear it, right? I think it's pretty pathetic and an immense allegation against our entire way of life. But that was the predicament that faced me. How could I write about him using the language that is inherently enormously pejorative, turning him into some kind of clown? I realized what I would do is I would write a book that was shaped in its structure as a kind of hollow space where he's present in his effect on other people. So a father, a doctor, travels taking the census as a census taker through a landscape with a grown son, who in this case is my brother with Down syndrome. And you feel the effect of this boy on the people in these visits from house to house. Going to read a little? If you want. Should I do it? I don't like to read to people who don't want to be read to. The woman who came to the door was about 35 and wore a loose sleeveless dress. She welcomed my son and me in, and we sat like three conspirators in her parlor, heads together. How is it that three people can just learn to laugh suddenly at anything that's said? We were like that, drawn implacably to an unaccountable joy, and then spinning along its edges gratefully. She answered my questions. She had not seen the census yet. I was its first messenger, and so before I left, I made our mark upon her. She opened her dress, the sort of thing that might confuse or worry an ordinary person, but for myself, having been a doctor, it was quite usual. I found the rib, I made the mark. There was something she said, a story she told. It was, her house had been robbed once by a man she knew. She was in the house at the time and had stood behind the drapes. As they went from room to room, the burglars taking things, they spoke to each other about the house and about her. She didn't mind at all, she said, the things they took. She had an inheritance of some sort and didn't need much of anything. But it was this, listening to the burglars talk, hearing them as they saw her belongings and spoke of them. It was delightful. She could almost have burst out laughing, so she said. When the man described her to the other burglars and she could imagine their minds matching her to the house and possessions, a sensation of giggling, of permanent and proper situation in that which is oblique came over her. To this day it has never left me, she said. She kissed my son on the cheek and embraced me fiercely when we went away. A terrible thing, I believe, had happened at some point to her right arm, but she did not mention it, nor did we. In the photographs by the door, she, as she put it, and here I am a bride, and here I am a bride, and here a child, and here a widow. But you are a widower. I'm sure you can recognize me in this photograph, however dark my costume. This is an example of the perfect accord of mind we fell into, the three of us. I had only to step through the door, only to introduce myself and show my bona fides, and then such a thing as that. I didn't realize until after, as we drove, and I mulled the encounter in my mind. But while we sat there huddled over the parlor table, she reached out and grasped my hand, and I did not shudder. And my son, he grasped her withered arm. There is nothing that cannot be natural. Thank you.